as we go down to the match here to see who is going to be joining you and 6 other players in the top 8 bracket. We have a qualification match, an elimination match. We have our match. Oh, God. Andreas' hand. Ooh.
All right.
Favorite kind of hand.
What do we have here? Who's in the play? Andreas's hand is kind of slow, right? I guess he does have 2 ways to mill himself. Is that an automatic keep if you have a bunch of mill cards? Yeah, I mean, I haven't played the deck before. I think I would be hoping for something more explosive. I think I would be hoping to draw a Hedron Crab in my opening hand. But Gaze with Flashback and a Secret Keeper, I guess is good enough.
I gotta say, I'm a little scared if I'm Andreas keeping a hand that has Wonder in it, and I guess drawing the Vengevine without a Psychic Frog to be able to put them into the graveyard there. Mason does have a Boggart Trawler in hand. That's one of the graveyard heat pieces available to the Yawgmoth deck. But it might also be filling the role of a land here, because a little land light, we just have the Overgrown Tomb and the Pendelhaven.
Yeah, let me actually open Mason's list. So he does have an Endurance. He has 1 Trawler. What are the other graveyard hate cards?
3 copies of Agatha's Soul Cauldron.
Oh, he has Soul Cauldron as well. Yeah, that is very, very unfortunate for Andreas. Yeah.
And Mason has now cast his commander in the form of Hapatra, Vizier of Poisons. Getting this Grizzly Bear down on the table here, opting to not keep up an Orcish Bow Masters, as Andreas is going to fire off another Worldly Gaze, hoping to hit a couple of chills, maybe an Amalgam. Something to get the party started. Like you said, we do have ways of actually, milling over cards. But we do have a couple of clunkers in our hand that might find difficult to sequence a spot to get them in play. But hey, Stitcher Supplier can help get things started.
Yeah, the hand doesn't look very explosive. I guess what you're hoping for is that you mill a bunch of Vengevines, then you can use the Grave Crawlers to bring them back and bring the Amalgams and start flooding the board. But so far, Andreas has only milled okay, Double Chill and an Archamoeba. So now we're talking.
We are technically on the board here. And in kind of a funny way, like Andreas's graveyard has nothing outside of the Otherworldly Gaze. Meaning that this Boggart Trawler isn't going to be as big of a slam dunk. It's, not able to operate at instant speed. You can't really catch them off, but ooh, throws the Hapatra in. I mean, this is a spicy. Is this too, like, if you're on Andreas' side, what's going on here? You're not worried about getting double blocked or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fully realizing that Hapatra is a big part of my opponent's deck, and they would certainly not want to trade it for my Stitcher and the Narcomoeba. So I'm fully expecting my opponent to have a Bowmasters here. But even then, I'm not even sure if I want to attack into the Stitcher because that just lets my opponent mill the cards. Maybe I would want to just kind of try to sit on the Hapatra and maybe try to find the right combo pieces where I combo off in a way where Yawgmoth and the Zulaport triggers finish off the opponent without having a chance to block. So I would be thinking about not even attacking. And yeah, let's see if Andreas gets to gain a little bit of extra advantage with those extra 3 cards in the graveyard.
Mason had a Surveil land there, putting a Yawgmoth on top. Namesake of the deck, probably something you want to keep, and Mason agrees, decides to keep it. While we're seeing an upkeep Otherworldly Gaze, trying to maybe sculpt their draw a bit, put a couple of Vengevines in the yard, maybe some more Creeping Chills. Ooh, we do see Psychic Frog.
Yeah, Psychic Frog is one way to get all these cards in the graveyard, which is what Andreas wants. But I think Andreas' draw was just a little too slow. He needed something much more explosive. He needed a Hedron Crab. He needed basically all of these cards to be in the graveyard. And yeah, start bringing back Vengevines on turn 2 or 3. If you're gonna play a slow game against Yawgmoth or some other combo deck, or basically any other deck in Modern at this point, then I don't like your chances all that much. In that case, that kind of defeats the purpose of playing this deck. So maybe the draw just hasn't worked out for Andreas
Right.
too well. But yeah, I mean sometimes sometimes you're gonna have the explosive nuts, and sometimes you're just gonna end up drawing a couple Vengevines and yeah.
And sometimes your turn 3 just involves 3 lands tapped and a Narcomoeba. Not the most
Yeah.
exciting thing in the world here. But we might not even have a Narcomoeba at the end of this. Looks like Mason kept open mana to throw an Orcish Bowmasters down here. We're gonna take care of that jellyfish. Draws the Yawgmoth, and now we're in a spot where we have the Yawgmoth. That's pretty important. We also have, this Graveyard Hate as our 4th land to get Yawgmoth in play. We're looking to do that. If I'm Mason, I'm not feeling too threatened. I'm a little cautious, maybe, uh, because like you said, Andreas' start has been a little slow. So why would what drives a person to keep that hand as like a 7-card hand? What
Yeah.
what are your thoughts here?
On the hand, you mean, or like Mason's
Oh,
line of
Mason's
play?
Mason's line of play here. Are we setting up to cast this Yawgmoth? Are we going to keep this Court of Calling for endurance? How are we
Yeah,
playing a
my
Boggart Crawler?
my thinking would be I want to set up for a win next turn while also protecting myself. So I think what Mason's going to end up doing is he's going to pass the turn sitting on that Court of Calling without attacking with too many creatures, so he can fetch an endurance, and that way he can protect himself pretty much from dying because most of the creatures on Andreas' side come from the graveyard. Although
The attack from Hapatra kind of leaves endurance off the table, unless, oh, I see, shrinking the young wolf, which is going to give you a snake as well as the undying trigger. Okay, we're
and
doing
yeah,
stuff.
and the wolf comes back, so this way you gain an extra life. So yeah, now Mason is sitting on a court for 3. So if he chooses, he can get himself an endurance, protect himself from some graveyard shenanigans, hopefully survive another turn, at which point he would be able to drop the Yawgmoth, and also play the court at the end of turn to get himself, a second young wolf, or basically at this point he would have the game locked up.
We got another Worldly Gaze from Andreas here, showing off a Stitcher Supplier, a Grave Crawler, and a Flare of Denial. Mind you, this is in the main phase, so we are locked. The cards that we have in hand here are really what we're locked into. We could flashback the Gaze, but didn't find a Vengevine. We found some Creeping Chills, but we haven't really been able to get repeatable damage on the table here. No prized amalgams. Just a lone jellyfish.
Yeah, I guess Andreas's mills have also been a little underwhelming. He ended up
Mhm.
drawing the Vengevine instead of milling it. He's basically half of his deck deep. Uh, and yeah, he hasn't found a Vengevine, he hasn't found an amalgam.
Mhm.
And yeah, I guess at this point it's too late.
Tell you, these Vengevine Dredge players, they have it tough. They tend to get a bad rap. All the bazaars of Baghdad, everybody's running Leyline of the Voids, but it's a struggle out there sometimes.
Yeah, and if you're playing a deck like that, if you're playing a dedicated graveyard deck or some kind of combo, like Storm, you really want to win game 1,
Mhm.
because in game 2s, especially in a format like Modern, you can expect your opponents to have some hate pieces in the sideboard that are going to completely stop your deck from working. So typically, if you're playing a deck like that, you kind of rely on winning game 1 and then
Mhm.
winning one of the post board games where either your opponent doesn't have the sideboard card, or you have a way to stop it by playing first. You can play Thoughtseize, get it from their hand. So Andreas losing game 1 here, that makes me believe that Mason is going to be a very, very big favorite to win the match.
The Court of Calling found a Grist, the Hunger Tide here, and we get to kill off the poor Merfolk Secret Keeper. It just wanted to hang out and maybe block. Um, We do have the good doctor hitting the table and well, wrapping up game one in favor for Mason Clark here.
Yeah, Andreas sees the writing on the wall. Doesn't think it's necessary to let Mason go through the motions, and instead saves time. And let's go for game two. Here we see Mason quickly add double Soulless Jailer, an Endurance, a Force of Vigor, and a Reclamation Sage. While Andreas is bringing in Toxic Deluge, which makes sense. You want to keep your opponent honest, keep their board small. If Andreas doesn't interact, then he's going to have a really bad time because Mason's just going to play out the creatures. He's going to put together the combo, what his deck is supposed to do, and he's going to combo Andreas out. But outside of that, I don't really see too many impactful cards in Andreas' sideboard. He could also bring in the Leyline.
Right. I got to imagine, I mean, for folks at home that may have just tuned in as well, these are open deck lists among the players. So Mason knows that Andreas has 4 copies of Leyline in the Void, which is potentially why the Force of Vigor and the Reclamation Sage are being considered here as tools against that. But Andreas has not hovered over those ley lines, I think, and I believe we've submitted. So looks like a list without the ley line of the voids has been submitted for game 2.
Yeah, I think Andreas might feel like since it is open deck list, as you just said, he's fully expecting Mason to bring in all these anti-enchantment cards, and maybe he feels it's just better if Mason has a couple of death cards in his deck, and he's just not going to bother with it because it is not Leyline. It's not as impactful in the matchup as something like Damping Sphere against Tron or Storm or something like that. Like the deck still gets to function. They still kind of get to do their thing and find an answer for the Leyline.
Got our players looking at their 7-card hands here. Now, Andreas, oh, there we go. All right. Quashed my question there. I was going to ask if we're sending this back. We're going all the way down to 5, whereas Mason's going to be keeping his 7-card hand here. I mean, for a 5-card hand, having a Stitcher Supplier into a Psychic Frog, that's not too shabby.
Yeah, I guess it's okay, but still, I think I would rather have a hand with Hedron Crab and 3 lands and a random card. Like Frog is good, but this is not the type of match. This is not like a mid-range battle where drawing a couple extra cards would give you an upper hand. This is still a matchup where Andreas is fighting against a combo deck. So the Frog is certainly good, but I still don't like Andreas' chances.
Right, we're looking to just be as explosive as possible instead of trying to prolong a game, especially against a deck filled with tutors and multiple pieces of graveyard hate. We did see the Stitcher Supplier milling a Wonder as well as a Hedron Crab, and Andreas opting to fetch up a Water Grave on turn 1 to set up the potential of drawing a Hedron Crab.
Yeah, that's
following turn.
That has a play. Now it's going to be interesting seeing what Andreas does. Does he go for the crab or does he go for the frog? I think he might play the crab and just say like, "Hey, my deck wins if I mill a lot of cards and I hit the right ones." But no, he goes for the frog. All right.
Opts to go for the frog. Mason not looking to expose the Yawgmoth on turn 1 there as well. Decides to find a Surveil land instead. And I mean, if we're in Mason's seat here, we have a Soulless Jailer, we have an Endurance, we've got cards to keep our opponents doing something fair. We kept our card on top, which the Boggart Trawler, another piece of graveyard hate.
Yeah, I mean, Mason kind of has it all.
It's a bit of a tough spot for sure. Mind you, those counters on the frog, they're permanent. So who knows? Maybe we get this frog big enough to crash through the jailer. I mean, currently it has flying due to the Wonder. when you're playing a deck like Andreas's, where you are very much all in on this graveyard plan against an opponent that has so many tools to kind of just stop your primary game plan. How what are some like important kind of maneuvering or features that you want to play to? Um, like is this your game plan? Just going all in on this one frog?
I think my game plan would be sort of just hoping my opponent doesn't have it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I see their deck. Yeah, you have all these endurances, you have trawlers, you have other ways. You have courts to find the endurances. You have multiple ways to stop me from doing what I'm doing. I can't really sideboard 15 cards and change my game plan. My
Right.
deck still functions the way it's built. I can't really change that too much. So I think my best shot at that point is just hoping you don't draw your sideboard pieces. I'm just gonna execute my game plan the same way I normally would.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, if you have it, you have it. Unfortunately for me, your deck is also a combo deck. So if I give you too much time, then you're just gonna combo me off, right? So I think Andreas is kind of just at a point where he has to go for it. He has to kind of goldfish and hope that Mason doesn't really draw that endurance or draw the right um, answers, basically to slow Andreas down. Because if the game goes long, Mason is an overwhelming favorite to win.
Right. Well, we are prolonging the game a little bit here as Mason goes into the tank about how he would like to sequence this next couple of plays here. Looks like we're just opting to keep up the endurance. Just hold up the endurance. Give us a way of maybe popping that wonder into the graveyard. Maybe some kind of insurance against any kind of Vengevine or prized amalgam party.
Yeah, and if my opponent passes their turn 3 after playing a jailer with no play, I am fully expecting them to have an endurance. Because if they keep 7, they don't have a 1 drop. Uh, and the idea of them also not having a play on turn 3, would they keep a hand where they would only really have the jailer as the only play they would be able to make in the first 4 turns? I would think that is unlikely. So I would be expecting Mason to have a trig here or the entrance.
Ooh, a little cute little heads up play too by Andreas. They're getting to activate the psychic frog to give it flying, knowing that both the endurance is going away, or sorry, not the graveyard is going away because of the endurance. But also, if these cards are getting put back in your deck, you don't exactly want to have all those fetch lands again. You want to be milling, the important cards. So making the best out of a rough situation here.
Oh, Mason is at 9.
Hmm.
You just need to flip a couple of creeping chills.
Hey, Creeping Chill also has a mana cost. Who knows? We may be hard casting some of these chills.
That's a very fair point. I think that's honestly what the game may end up coming down to. Andreas casting the creeping chill for the win.
Mason using this as a turn to play out a whole variety of creatures there. The Wall of Roots and the Young Wolf plays the Boggart Trawler as a land. I believe it's the Boggart Bog into play tapped. Still has the option of Quarter Calling here for 2 if
Yeah,
necessary.
yeah. I think Mason kind of has to win next turn, right? Because he can cord. I'm not sure how many counters the wall has, but I think he can cord for 3 even. And if he just finds another young wolf, he can start drawing a bunch of cards next turn. Uh, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Andreas is pitching everything more or less to the psychic frog here to give it flying, crashing in for 7. Now endurance does have reach. There is a little bit of an issue in regards to that, and we will be popping off this Court of Calling, I've got to imagine. We're firing off a chord for 3 here, using the counter from the Wall of Roots, finding a copy of Grist. Saying goodbye to the endurance once we go to the combat damage step. And saying goodbye to Andreas, unfortunately, conceding the match, realizing the writing is on the wall, conceding, which puts a Mason Clark into the top 8. Congratulations to Mason.